What is up there, Workforce? Chris here with Work to Game, and we are going to fly through the patch notes. If you want a slower reading, feel free to go watch Brian's video. He did it live, and that should be up. They're archived for you, and this is the 5.0 patch notes. Keep in mind, this will not be going over the fact that Raid Eden's Gate will be scheduled for 5.01. The Treasure Hunt Instance Dungeons of Gaia and Eden's Gate Savage are in 5.05. And so that's kind of our 2-week and 4-week. And then the Restoration of Holy See of Ishgard and New Game Plus are planned for 5.1 or later. So that is not what this is going to be going over. Now, we know about the new playable areas. We know that the Crystarium, that's the kind of greenhouse-looking city that we've been running around in. We know about Yulmore. We've been seeing that in some of the cutscenes. That's the like steampunk balloon city. Lakeland was one of the cities they let us run through at the media tour. Kalusia is a beautiful like plain city. That's where the balloon city is. And then Amarang actually looks a little bit like Thanaland to me. Ilmeg was the one that we spent so much time in as part of the media tour, and that was for that dungeon. And then the Raktika Greatwood, I think they actually showed us, I remember images of this. And then, of course, all those are going to have their own Aetherites. Now, with quests, we're going to be getting a whole bunch of 5.0 scenario quests. And the new side story quests have been added. Now, because I'm talking so fast, I want these images to play nice and slowly. So they will be playing slowly here, and they will not line up with what I am talking about. Now, the new side quests are going to employ an automatic level system known as Quest Sync. Not all quests can have Quest Sync. I assume that there's just some limitations there. And but for the most part, that's designed so that your alternative battle classes, those second and third ones you level, can go through the quests in the zones and enjoy that and feel like it's worth your time. Role quests have been added, so instead of kind of doing class quests along the way, they've added classes for tank, physical DPS, magical DPS, and healer. And then we have your level 80 job quests for all of the existing jobs in game, including Gunbreaker and Dancer will have level 80s, but they're going to start out a little bit differently. We'll get to that in a second. Crystarium deliveries have been added for kind of your hand and land. Keep in mind these have been broken down into 5 facets, so just like role quests to simplify. We have facet of forging, which is your blacksmith, armor, goldsmith, crafting, which is carpenter, leatherworker, weaver, nourishing, which is alchemist, culinarian, and then your gathering, which is your miner and botanist, and then fisher is all on its own, which really makes sense. Leaves have been updated, and the rewards for all this have been adjusted. Now, a lot of this content is basically just moving the goalpost forward. So if something worked a certain way at 70, that's probably the way it works at 80. If something worked for lower levels, like up to 59, it had a bonus of some sort, that's probably been extended to 69. So in general, it seems like they've just kind of moved everything forward, just like we see with Tomestones and everything. We, of course, have had new fates added. Keep in mind that now they will be dropping gemstones. I don't know if that's just when you hit level 80 or whatever, but once you get those gemstones, those will be used at gemstone traders, which is you can turn those in for things like orchestrant scrolls, and hopefully they'll have all sorts of things added to that. I think mount speed was there when we were at the media tour, so I hope it stays that way. We are getting new treasure maps. That makes sense. They're adjusting the level syncs for everything, so like the old treasure maps are going to be synced at 70. So keep in mind that a lot of patches are going to be going over all the things that are pretty logical when you break down, like that all the Stormblood content is going to either be buffed because now it's considered old content, or it's going to be locked so that we can't run back and just mow it down at level 80. Now, Grand Company is going to have some new supply and provisioning, so you're catching a theme here. And then the Blue Mage, Gunbreaker, and Dancer symbols have been added to company crests, which is kind of cool. Housing from the Furnishing Design Contest has been added. This is like that log that they showed us a picture of. And then for people that like estate tags, they've added 4 more of those. There's a new preview function for furnishings. The way I read this is that you'll be able to use this prior to purchase, so that you can kind of lay things out and decide what you want for people that do really crazy stuff with their space. And then some of the restrictions on exterior fixtures have been, based on Housing Lord, have been removed, but they've had to adjust appearance to allow for some of that to take place. The crafting furnishings inside your house will be used up to 70 now, and then you'll be able to, of course, ask the caretaker about a lot of these new features. The striking dummies have been moved to level 80, and they have been added to Crystarium for anybody that was worried that we wouldn't have any. I was told that it was intentional that they didn't have them available for the media tour. New orchestrant scrolls have been added for all the new music, I'm sure. New aquarium fish has been added. Once again, makes sense. We're getting a lot of new fishing holes and Lalu gathering points. We're getting hydrangea seeds for flower pots. We're getting new prizes available for MGP, so make sure that you continue to stock up on that. They're adding new triple triad cards. They're making some quality of life changes to Mahjong. Remember, guys, this is when we get Hrothgar and Viera. We'll take a Fantasia potion to do this. I'm pretty sure you get a free one when you finish your ARR story, but for anybody that doesn't have that, or if that's not the case, you actually will be able to buy those over on the Mog Station and make that change. There are going to be new sightseeing logs added, and then there's a ton of new achievements and titles and rewards for those that have been added for all the new content. Wondrous Tales looks like it got an update. Your Skywatcher NPCs that tell you the weather will be added. They will be in the new zones and the old zones, and they'll actually be able to tell you about the weather on the other side. So the source will be able to tell you about the first and vice versa. There's new emotes, there's new hairstyles, there's a ton of new battle system changes. We've been talking about this for weeks now. Gunbreaker was added. It will start in New Gridania, and Dancer has been added. It will start in Limsa Lamenta lower decks. There was a ton of changes to the battle system in general. We removed TP, we capped MP at 10,000. Piety that added to your max MP now does regen instead, and we've done a lot to just change the way battle flows in general. So like all your combos, those have been extended for how long you have to press that ability, because there's more things being weaved in for some classes. A set of role actions has been assigned to all jobs. We kind of saw that coming. They've made a couple of changes to how limit breaks add up, but for people that weren't worried about how that added up before, just know it'll still fill, just fills a little differently now. And then the interrupt effect has been added. They showed that to us in the live letter. Charged actions are basically, you'll see those on jobs. They'll make sense to you if your job has them. And basically when the ability hits its cooldown, instead of it just now sitting there wasting, it'll just start counting again towards having 2 of that ability, and then 3, and however high there is for the maximum number of charges. Certain weapon skills will have unique recast timers, and they have a UI element for that. Pets have drastically changed. Anything that previously qualified as a pet action is now incorporated into your player action, and pets are no longer targetable by player or enemy actions. So that's a pretty drastic change. Parrying and blocking has been lower effectiveness towards reducing damage. And then the party bonus has been adjusted to encourage 8-mans to have a variety of players now that they're trying to work on removing class synergies. So tank, melee, physical ranged, magic, and healer for a total of a maximum of 5%, and that's to all of your main stats: strength, vitality, dex, mind, and int. So you are going to want to make sure your 8-man has at least one of each of those roles. So that makes sense to me. And then in accordance with the level cap bonus, your preferred world bonus is going to go up to 69. So they are adding a bunch of new dungeons, and they have shown us that the kind of trial for that, they know that those are kind of built a lot into story. So the demo footage for that, they said was very limited because they didn't want it to have any spoilers in it. But keep in mind with dungeons that the chain bonus has been removed, and then the total experience has been increased to more level out the amount of experience you get per run. The trust system has been added. This is meant to be slower than you run it with players. When you do it the first time, it looks like you're gonna have to do it outside the dungeon, and from then on you'll be able to do it through the if it's your first time doing the dungeon, you'll queue right there outside the dungeon. The rest of the time you'll do it through something in your duty finder tab. At the media tour, it was a separate thing, and then you go in there and you select your dungeon and you select what people you want to run with. They talked about why it'll be slow to add other players, so feel free to watch our interview if you want to see more info on that. The level Stormblood content, a lot of that has things where it has like level 70 caps now. It's been set to like, oh, it's set to a certain eye level cap now, and so on. So they're basically just putting it in line with what you'd see for like 3.x type stuff. They have added new trials. The Echo will now be added to all level the Stormblood trials. The strength of the Echo for Omega Alphascape Savage has been increased to 20%. And then Tomestones, we moved to Goetia as our new Tomestone. Caps at 2,000. There is no weekly cap, and you can get that all the time. Now in roughly 4 weeks, when we get our Savage, we will be getting the Phantasmagoria, so we'll get our Phanta Tomestones, and those I assume will have the like 450 a week cap or whatever. And then anything you currently have is going to be kind of migrating into Poetics, and anything that costs the old tomes will now cost Poetics. They're doing the same thing with scripts. We're moving to white scripts for our level 80. That'll be capped at 2,000, just like the others. And then the red scripts are going away. Anything that costed red before will now cost yellow. Everything's moving up to yellow, and then the blues have been deleted. So they have capped some of the things that like undersized parties can't be used for Great Hunt or Great Hunt Extreme. The Raid Finder only list trials for 5.0 now, so they've changed the way your Raid Finder works now, so they've updated it just like before. And then the Duty Finder has been adjusted, so now instead of 50-60, we kind of speculated what this would be, it ended up being 50-60-70. That of course means that you're going to have to be level 70 to enter into that roulette, and then the rewards for all that have been adjusted to being Poetics, Goetia, etc. And then the Duty Roulette leveling has actually moved from cracked clusters to 1 cracked Stella cluster and 2 cracked Planet clusters. And that's because we're getting some Materia changes, so makes sense. There's been a bunch of new enemies, a bunch of new elite marks. There, of course, are new mounts, new minions, all new stuff. But speaking of hunts, your S rank is going to say you sense the presence of a powerful mark when it's in your current area, and then your Bs and stuff will say like you sense it to the north or you sense it to the south, and once it dies, once somebody kills it or whatever, it'll say you no longer sense the presence of your mark. Your Centurio skills seals cap has been increased from 1,000 to 4,000. That's a pretty big jump. So I'm wondering if they're changing the drop rate and the cost of things or whatever, but we'll just have to see. And then Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High, the loot has been adjusted, and Gunbreaker and Dancer are going to have arms available for that. And then they're also going to have new things in the high scores. So if people want to go level through that or give that a shot with those classes, that's available. Your Stone Sky Sea has been increased to 80. And in Eureka, with anything that costed TP, they of course had to either remove the cost or change the effect. And so Rejuvenate now restores HP, and Wisdom of the Duelist, just the effect which reduces TP cost has been removed. PvP traits, they're gone. So on that note, the tab for those will be gone, and the tab for any of the stuff that's been removed will be gone. The tab for things that have been added will be added. So your system configuration, your character configuration, the text commands in the game, those have all changed to reflect the content. So if a piece of content is gone, obviously the text command will have been removed, and if a piece of content has been added, obviously they will add text commands for that as appropriate. In PvP, TP has been removed, range of melee attacks increased from 3 to 5 yalms, global cooldown increased from 2.3 to 2.4 seconds. HP and MP recovery rates inside and outside of combat have been jacked with, and all for the better, so everything's improved. And then XP yield after a match will now be granted to the job used at the time of registration rather than the job at the end of the match. So I guess that's more in line with what they intended. New items have been added. Obviously, new recipes have been added. That's going to affect the way what items are sold, descent, submitted as expert deliveries, converted into Materia, whether or not they can be sold. And they've gone back and they've adjusted sales prices and all of that. So don't be shocked if something changed. And then the effects of items like Icarus Wing and things that jacked with TP will now just create a visual effect. And then your engineering manuals now last 180 minutes. Then they drop to 75% experience for over level 70. So I wonder if they're slowing that down a little. Now your MP recovery items are going to do a fixed amount because they're just a percentage of we all have the same amount of mana now. And so it's no longer affected by player attributes. That's like your ethers, X-ethers, elixirs, etc. And then they have adjusted the accessories attributes, and they've adjusted your Aetherite earring. If it's by a tank, it now goes from vitality to strength. Haste, the attribute itself remains the same, but the attribute on certain equipment is sometimes now changed to a plus sign instead of a minus. And then new items available in exchange for achievement certificates added. And then your 71 to 80 gear will be repaired with grade 7 dark matter. And then Gunbreaker and Dancer have been added to various gear sets. So they're not obviously getting their own gear. We kind of expected that. So like Gunbreaker will be tanks, Dancer will be with that physical ranged. Grade 7 and Grade 8 Materia was added, but Grade 8 Materia will always result in failure when it's added as the second or later Materia and Advanced Materia melding. So be sure that you put that 8 on first. And then if you have multiple Materia of the same type present in your inventory, you can continue to meld them in succession, which is awesome. Your main stat ones, so your strength, vitality, dex, dent, and mind, have been removed and from the loot table, and if you still have them, they're in your inventory, but they no longer have any effect on gear. Now, they've changed the salvage rates for things, so be sure you try to pull all those things off now. And then when you're doing Mutimex there in Thanalan, I think it's Blackbrush Station, Central Thanalan 23.7, 13.6, he will now be able to transmute those like before, but now will no longer have them in his loot table. So I'm seeing people sell those below cost, and so I was buying those up. Just be sure you grab some of those and go over there and transmute them into something of value. And definitely don't sell yours off below vendor it. The worst case, vendor it. Your descent has been increased from 3 to 450, and the cumulative skill cap from 1160 to 1370, so that's just over 3 times, not unexpected. The level cap for hand and land being increased to 80 means that we had elemental aspects removed, new actions are removed. Looks like they're changing the way kind of cross-class works, so like Baragut's Blessing and Steady Hand 2 is now available to all of them. They've also removed a fair number of actions from them, lining up with this, and then they've added and modified things accordingly. So there's a ton of changes. The link to all of this stuff is down below, and so feel free to scroll to the section that interests you in particular. They did change the crafting window. This should be a lot easier to use, and it shows like how much progress you're going to get, the quality increase, the progress increase. It just makes it a lot easier to use, and I think it's going to be a lot better for people that want to try crafting without macros and stuff and just use the actual crafting in the game as intended. I just think it's easier to kind of gauge what the heck is going on. So new actions and traits have been added for Disciples of Land from 70 to 80. That makes sense. And then with the fishing holes added, S-rank records can now be obtained from certain fishing spots listed on the fishing log. New teeming waters have been added, and then your AAA records can be obtained with all gig heads listed in the fishing log. They've added a new bait for all kind of the 2.x areas, so hopefully that'll be a little easier for people just starting fishing to kind of get going and all of that. And then the new items will be usable for the ethereal reduction. There will be a bunch of things added to that list. So that's exciting. Clusters can no longer be gathered. And then when we talk about like concealed gathering points, there are a fair number that are no longer considered rare or hidden, and then we have the need for like those websites has largely been reduced. So you are going to have the ability to anything you've done, any like unspoiled node you've gathered from in the past, you will now be able to see, you'll be able to track what times it's up on, you'll be able to set a timer in game for the next occurrence of that node. You'll be able to categorize them by region for regional folklore and things like that. And keep in mind that they do want you moving into the new zones for these. So for players above level 70, you're going to get capped at 10,000 experience when trading in collectibles of level 70 or lower. So definitely move on into the new area. So this is the point where they start talking about scripts and stuff if you're trying to scroll and look for that. This is the point where they show a lot of the new mounts, and then they are saying that there's new items added to Calamity Salvagers. All mounts can fly now. All of them. Period. New Chocobo Bardings have been added, new minions have been added, and there's been a market board added to Crystarium. I don't think that's unexpected. Keep in mind, guys, that with retainers, you're now going to be able to set retainers. You're going to be able to register retainers to the Crystarium. You're going to be able to build them out of Roth and Viera, so if you don't want to change your personal race, maybe resetting a retainer to do that would work for you. Hairstyle and face paints obtained as rewards can now be applied to them, and then the cap is set to 80. That's still going to be locked behind you. So, like I have a level 70 Black Mage retainer. The fact that I'm not leveling my Black Mage right away means that no matter whether I send it on the new missions or not, it's not going to be able to gain experience until I start to gain Black Mage experience. So just be sure you're leveling the jobs that you've decided to link your retainers to, so that they can hit that highest level, because they start to bring in a crazy amount of money if they do. This interface has gotten a little easier. You can now sort it by the different categories like class, inventory amount, guild, items for sale, and all of that. And so that'll be hopefully a little easier to use for people that have a lot. They've also made the animation of summoning and dismissing a little more responsive. And then in addition to all the new like achievements and titles, there's new rewards for those, and achievements can now be filtered by completion status or type of reward, and there's now a sub thing that you can set them to, you can set them on a watch list so that when you open up that pane, you can just immediately jump to the ones you're actively trying to work on. So if you're trying to like just farm up commendations or whatever, because of the new mentor change, and you're, you want to be a mentor in the new status, so you're just trying to hit that checklist, now you can track that. Hunt marks are now displayed in recommendations. Sightseeing clues are now displayed in recommendations, and the recommendations window can now be locked. The party finder, now there's the ability to put this in a chat so that people can click on it as a message, and it'll automatically open the party finder listing. This is really awesome. So if you have friends in a cross-world link shell or in a free company or whatever, and you're throwing up a party finder for something and you want to invite them, you just throw that in, they click on it, it'll work hopefully as well as the flag system works for maps. Speaking of cross-world link shells, we've moved up to 8 of those. There's going to be text and subcommands with that. And then speaking of Party Finder, your party window has changed to where now, for you healers out there, there's going to be a down arrow when somebody's below full life to kind of add one more visual indicator. And then when shields, those are going to be a yellow bar that when they're below full life, it's going to be added to that missing space. And then when they're at full life, it's going to be added just above it. So hopefully that all is really exciting for you guys. The amount of glamour has been upped from 200 to 400, and the number of plates has been upped from 10 to 15. Trusts will be available in group pose, and then target HP, when you drop below 1%, will now go 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, instead of just being 1% to dead. The UI scheme, we're adding new themes, so now we have, instead of just dark, we now have a light theme. So hopefully people that wanted their UI to look a little different like that. And then the new adventurer status is now still 168 hours, but now it's instead of being Far Edge of Fate, it's a Requiem for Heroes for that to tick off. If you're a new adventurer now and you've lost your status from completing Far Edge of Fate and you want that to be back on, you can type in /NA, as in new adventurer, /NA status space on, and it'll turn back on that new adventurer status if you want that, I assume, until you hit the 168 hours and it falls off. Now, mentors. This is a pretty drastic change. You have to have completed the level 80 tank quest, the level 80 healer quest, at least one of the level 80 DPS quests, 1,000 dungeons and trials, and at least 300 player commendations. And then for hand and land, 1 hand, 1 land, 100 synthesized collectibles, 300 gathered collectibles. If you had this prior to 5.0, you keep it. But between 5.1 and 5.2, you are expected to go out and achieve all of these things. So 5.2, which would be sometime closer to the end of the year, looking at that kind of 3 to 3.5 month patch cycle. So we have 5.1, then 5.2, your status will be removed. So sometime around that kind of 2020 standpoint, you want to have that done by. We'll know more about that date as we get a little further into 5.1 and seeing if everything's releasing on the expected schedule. DualShock controllers. Your PlayStation controller now vibrates when a Duty Finder matching is completed. Very cool. And then the following adjustments have been made to cutscenes. Text related to the formation or disbanding a party will no longer appear over your cutscene, so you can enjoy that. And the manner in which dialogue selections are displayed has been changed. Looks a little cleaner in my opinion. The position identifying the letter next to a focus target's name has been put before the target instead of after the target. I think that's a whole lot cleaner from a UI standpoint. And then when you're on the map, if there's a quest objective that has elevation to it and you're flying along, it'll say that it'll have an arrow if it's below you or an arrow if it's above you. Job gauge has been revised. Your currency tabs has been revised. The frame rates being set to unlimited is now a max of 90 FPS. And And that is really it. I flew through those. I know it's a lot to do. I know it's an absolute crazy amount. And it took me at least an hour to read this the first time. So the link is in the description below. Keep in mind that these images have been out of sync because I'm not talking at the pace that the images deserve. So enjoy everything coming in 5.0. Enjoy your day off. Brian and I will be live an hour before launch, so we'll be live at 3 a.m. our time instead of 4 a.m. And we will get jumping in. If you want to know what we're doing first, we have videos up on each of what we're doing, and we have a draft on who's responsible for each job this expansion. We have a ton of guides. Lately, we've been leaning into opinion pieces and community feedback and all of that because that's been what's going on with the game. It's not really been a time for releasing guides, but expect the channel to go through a pretty drastic shift because the content has gone through a pretty drastic shift. So hopefully you guys enjoy that and are along for the ride. I am having an absolute blast with 14. I'm really impressed with 8.2 and WoW, so I think it's a really great time to be a gamer. My name is Chris with Work to Game. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. What is Work to Game? 30 seconds, go! Work to Game is basically a channel where we talk about video games, anything we like about video games. We sometimes post vlog videos about something else that we just want to talk about. We kind of have a schedule. It changes all the time. It's in the About section on YouTube. We also stream over on Twitch just anytime we want to play games. Right now, it's happening more and more. I don't know what's happening at the time you watch this video, but the best thing you could do is click on the About page and kind of see if there's a rough plan that we have here